Okay, let's talk about the emergence of some of these small states during transition from the Bronze Age and into the Iron Age. A lot of textbooks call this the period of the small kingdoms, and as you can kind of see from the map, that some of these aren't going to be as big, perhaps, as we saw with Mesopotamia or Egypt, but they're still going to be very important. Well, the first one I'll tell you about are the Hittites. The Hittites are considered to be one of the first truly Iron Age people. Their capital is up here at Hattusis, and the Hittites are going to eventually create an empire that is in today mostly what is modern day Turkey. There's is some of the archaeology of Hattusis. You can see some of the old city there. There's some of it there as well. The the Hittites were very good. They were very warlike. Much of their art depicts their warriors, and they were using chariots. They were using archers. So very warlike and very powerful. They will create an empire, and we'll go back to the map here, just to the north of Egypt. And during the New Kingdom, Egypt is going to try to expand this way. Of course, the Mesopotamian region is right over here, and so the Hittites are sort of in between these two areas. The Hittites are going to they're going to speak a language that is related to the Indo-Europeans. So they're an Indo-European group. They're very warlike. They are very powerful, and so powerful, in fact, they're going to fight the Egyptians to a standstill. The the book talks a little bit about the Battle of Kadesh, where Ramses II and his Egyptian army will be pushing to the north. The Hittites will fight them to a standstill, and they end up signing a treaty with one another. Now they do end up exchanging a whole lot. They end up being fairly prosperous as a result, but it is an example of how the Hittites have become very powerful. They don't last very long. By probably about 1200 or so BC, they are gone. So the Hittites are up here, and certainly probably by about 1200 or so, they're on their way out. Another group that we need to talk about are these guys, the Phoenicians. Okay, Phoenicia sits right here on the Eastern Mediterranean. So the three major cities are right there as well. Okay, the Phoenicians are a group of people who they're sort of landlocked. If you kind of go back to our map up here, Phoenicia is right here. They can't really expand up here to the north because of the Hittites and the Mesopotamians. They can't expand down here because of the Egyptians. And so the only really way that they could expand was out into the sea. And so sometimes the Phoenicians are referred to as the Sea Peoples. They will create an extensive trade network. They will found settlements all throughout the Western Mediterranean, in Spain, in modern day Spain, in modern day North Africa, including the city of Carthage right here. Carthage is a big deal. When we talk about the Romans later on, you will be hearing me talk a whole lot about Carthage. So the Phoenicians were very good at trade. They will be trading goods all throughout this region. They will, one of their most famous sort of goods is a dye that would, when it was made out of shellfish, and when it came into contact with cloth, it turned it purple, and it was very valuable and very much sought after. The Phoenician city of Byblos is perhaps the home of the alphabet. The Byblos was a sort of world-renowned city at that time for writing materials. The Phoenicians are really important to us because not only are they excellent traders and they spread throughout the Mediterranean, but they also create a phonetic alphabet. And the Phoenician phonetic alphabet was fairly simple. Their writing was based on those sounds of their language, and that alphabet is really kind of a revolution. Today, our alphabet is based on sounds, and we've already talked a little bit about that. So the use of the phonetic alphabet is going to be copied by the Greeks. It's going to be copied by most everyone else that comes along as well. The Phoenicians will eventually, of course, be pushed on by another bigger group, and they don't. And you can see that territorially they are never very big. I mean, this is really the extent of Phoenicia, but its ability to trade out into the Mediterranean, its establishment of a phonetic alphabet, very important. The next group we're going to mention, and there's I forgot I had this slide in here. There is the Phoenician alphabet, which then will be correspond to the Greek and then later the Roman alphabet. And kind of remember that it's based on sound. There's Carthage. Carthage will eventually be right here. Very important later on. One group that we also have to start talking about are the Israelites or the Hebrews. The Hebrews are really important to us, not because of the size of their kingdom, which is very small, and is never really very well unified, but because of their transition into monotheism. It will be the Hebrews that will be one of our first truly monotheistic groups. The Hebrews essentially were nomads. They, at one time, are going to be Mesopotamian, and they'll leave there, end up in what is today modern day Israel, then only to be enslaved by the Egyptians later on. The Hebrew story begins with Abraham. Abraham is the patriarch. Abraham is the first to embrace the worshiping of the one God. The Abraham will, according to the Old Testament, be a resident in a Mesopotamian city called Ur. He will leave there. He will gain the advice and the counsel of Yahweh, the one true God, and he will make a covenant with God. He will agree to worship only God. And in exchange, Abraham is allowed and guided to what becomes Israel. And to seal that covenant, he was asked to sacrifice his only son, Isaac. But before that happened, God stopped him and allowed him to sacrifice an animal instead. The sealing of the covenant, this agreement between the Hebrews and their God. So Abraham is the patriarch. He's super important in this, and his descendants are going to eventually become the Israelites. They're going to become the Hebrews. The kind of the next stage, though, sees the Hebrews enslaved in Egypt. They will, after making their way over here, they will end up being enslaved in Egypt, and to escape, we have to kind of introduce our second major figure in this whole story, and that is Moses. Okay, now a lot of us, when we think of Moses like this, right? But Moses was originally really a prince in Egypt, but his Hebrew lineage will allow him to ask Pharaoh to allow the people of Egypt to go back home. And after showing really Pharaoh God's power, Moses will eventually lead the Hebrews out of captivity in what becomes the Exodus. And they will leave Egypt and perhaps wander through this whole area before they will eventually end up moving back up to the promised land. So, really, according to the text, about 40 years or so. Now, the important thing about Moses is not only does he free the Hebrews, but we have a new covenant made with Yahweh. The Ten Commandments, the law becomes the new covenant. And if you look at the first of the Ten Commandments over there, thou shalt have no other gods before me. It's a restatement of Hebrew monotheism. So now we're sort of into this use of the law. Once they return, after Moses brings down the Ten Commandments from Mount Sinai, and today St. Catherine's Monastery is on that area where supposedly Moses made contact the with God. The the tablets were placed in an ark to be carried by the Hebrews as they made their way back to the Promised Land. And the Ark of the Covenant, and notice that word again, right, was transported via the tabernacle, and eventually, the when the Hebrews make their way back to the Promised Land, expel all of the people that were there through warfare, and establish the kingdom under David and then Solomon, the the temple will be built. Okay, under Solomon's reign during the 900s BC, the temple here is built and to house the Ark of the Covenant, and the temple would have had the Holy of Holies, which is where the Ark would have been kept, and it becomes a visible symbol of the relationship between the Hebrews and the one God. Today, this is all that's left of Solomon's temple. It's called the Wailing Wall. And this is really all that remains of the original temple after it was destroyed by invaders. When the Babylonians invade, they will destroy the temple. The ark is lost. The temple will be rebuilt later on, only to be destroyed by the Romans in about 70 AD. The So here's kind of the Wailing Wall today. Eventually, the Hebrew kingdom splits into two parts. One is Judah, and one is Israel. Now, the kingdom of Israel, is going to be invaded and destroyed by the Assyrians. Judah will be invaded and destroyed by the Babylonians. So in 587, and Israel will be invaded and destroyed by Sargon the Assyrian in 722. The Israelites will be taken into captivity, and many will be lost. Those that are taken by the Assyrians will be lost. Those that are taken into Babylonia later on will be allowed to return when the Persians take control of this area. The Assyrians are another group that we should mention. They are very warlike. They will take control of this region between 900 and 500 BC. Very warlike, very powerful. The Assyrians will carve out a kingdom throughout this whole region. They are so mean and cruel and vicious, they will eventually be overthrown by a new Babylonian empire that will rise and take control of this area, defeating the Assyrians and then taking control of this area. It'll be the Babylonians that will conquer Jerusalem and take the Hebrews over here into captivity, use them as slaves until they are freed by the Persians later on. So the Assyrians, very warlike, conquering this entire area, only to be overthrown by okay, there the Assyrians taking the Jews captive. The Assyrians will then be booted out by the Babylonians and under King Nebuchadnezzar. And if you kind of go and read about this, you'll know that this is Nebuchadnezzar that creates the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. The After this, the big group that we'll have to talk about are the Persians, and they are not a small kingdom, and I'll be talking about them in class.